1992, 22nd of September, Jesus made me. And I hated, that was after the death of my mother, and I was contemplating suicide. I hated anything that calls itself God. And I said, if there be anything that claims to be God above them heavens, you come and stop me today. Normally, I grew up in Islam, and we were told that the greatest prophet that ever existed was Prophet Muhammad, and God, therefore, he was the last prophet God to have spoken to. Well, that's what I grew up believing, because Muslims are very staunch in raising their children when it comes to faith. Basically, they take you to this imam, or you call them here in Swahili mualim, and they take you to the mosque every Saturday, and they make sure they actually, in the mosque, there's that where the mualim sits for the madarasa, where there's that rope, a knot of a rope, whereby you can put your two little small hands in there, and they pull it, and they can whip you if you're being a bad student of the Quran. Actually, Muslim kids, by the age 12, you should be able to recite the Quran at heart and have memorized it. Now, you wonder, when I came to faith, I was 15. And I was a great disappointment to my family, because everybody thought the way I loved Allah, being to some of the history behind me, that when I was about 4 or 5, they were fasting the month of Ramadan, and I started to fast, and they never woke me up to eat dak, with that 3 a.m. Feast that you eat in preparation of the fast. So they never woke me up, and because they didn't, I knew that I'm supposed to fast as everybody else, but they were saying I'm too young to fast. I said, you're a liar. I'm going to be fasting. I went to school, and then the teachers called my guardians. I say guardians because at that time I wasn't living with my mom. I was living at my grandmother's place, because long story short, my mom and my father separated when I was about crawling stage over the issue of this hand, when I dipped it in porridge and got burnt. My father comes back, slaps my mom. She loses consciousness, and then she regains consciousness. She picks me and leaves my dad. Her father told her, no man touches you, they lay a hand on you, you don't never look back. So my father tried to get my mom back. She never accepted that. That's how I ended up in the hands of a stepfather, who used to assault me physically, put a knife on my neck if I ever told my mom. So I was young. I said, because they said I shouldn't tell my mom, but I can tell my grandmother. So that's how my thinking told me. So I disappeared. And I ran. My mom used to use the East African Railway when he used to work. And she used to do some importing, exporting foods and things like that. So my stepfather was a lumberjack who used to fall trees. And because I was young, he stayed longer. I didn't understand the weeks and the months, but I realized whenever he brought that big truck when they were floating timber, he stayed longer, and mom stayed wherever she was on her safaris longer. And I was with this man who used to beat me, come back from school, lock me in a small room where we used to put charcoal, the coals, you know. And then, you know, that's the stew that comes from the charcoal was, and I wanted to wee, and they put a bucket there. I would wee and do all my business in that bucket, because this man didn't want me to pray. So I could look through the gaps to see my friends that were playing outside, and I wasn't playing. And when he would feed me with ugari and give me ugari and bean stew over here. So I first finish ugari without the stew, and then he gives me the ugari. So then he'll call me out, beat me, tell me to sweep the yard that was big. I was about 5. So I didn't know why he's beating me, why he doesn't like me. And he would give me long pull neck t-shirts so that my mom doesn't see the beating. So I said, let me run to my grandmother. So they tell me I arrived around about 3 a.m. with swollen legs. The journey was long. And I told my grandmother everything, and my mom didn't know where I was. 2 weeks they were looking for me, until when she came to see her grandmother, they lost the child and find me over there. So that's how my story ended up being at my grandmother's place. Now, fast forward, bring you back to where I was now. Here I am, taken to school. I'm fasting. They come back and tell them, why are you forcing this child to fast? They said, this kid, we told him not to fast. We didn't even wake him up to eat daku to prepare for the fasting. Anyway, long story short, they said they were not going to wake me up. I said, I don't care. So they didn't wake me up. I continued. They are eating in the night. I don't eat, but I fast. And then tell me during the at noon, Moses, you need to eat because you know you didn't eat daku. So little children finish at 12 noon. I said no. The sheikh said when the sun sets we all eat. I'm not breaking my fast. So I would stand by an anthill with the banana watching the sun. As the sun sets, I also begin to pray. So then I begin to break. Then I ate. I broke my fast. And then I go and get the wudu to pray. So I did it and they realized they're not waking me up. We went up to, they said maybe he was going to stop. We went to 20 days and they realized this boy ain't stopping. So they started welcoming me to eat with them in the night to prepare for the fasting. So I continued. So everybody looked at me like I was going to be something like in their faith, in their religion. This boy, there's a way Allah has chosen him. That devil lied. Allah didn't choose me. God chose me. Hallelujah. So why I say Allah didn't choose me, Allah is not God. Because Allah is not Trinity. In Surah Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad in the Quran, that is a surah in Surah Al-Jinni, a chapter according to jinnis. You know, in the Quran, the jinnis talk, the cows talk, and then they tell you it was an inspiration that was given to Muhammad. But you see, the jinni told Muhammad, say, Kullu huwa Allahu ahad Allahu samad, walam yalid, walam yulad, walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. In the Quran, when Allah is talking, he says, Inna Allahu, I, Allah. But in this particular segment, the jinnis are telling Muhammad is say, Kullu, say, Allahu ahad Allahu samad, lam yalid, walam yulad, walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Said that Allah is not begotten, Allah has no mother, Allah has no father, Allah has no son. And the Bible tells me in 1 John, who is the Antichrist except he who denies that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So Islam is an Antichrist religion, in case you didn't know. So that being said, now I get born again and I disappointed many. But mind you, I grew up in Islam watching everybody praying 5 times a day, very staunch, but at the same time on a high dimension of witchcraft taking place in my family. Most of you, I grew up, I don't see, that's why there's, in my pursuit for the presence of God, there is something that, in my pursuit, many times I tell people, we do not idolize this book, the Bible. Most of you who are not born again, you need to understand this. We do not idolize the book, this Bible, but we look beyond the book to the author, God himself. So you see, I prayed, I've been on the other extreme of darkness and I've seen, and now you can't lie to me. So Christianity, faith, and our faith in Christ is not a figment of an imagination, but rather it is truth, it is life. So to those Christians that are not really serious, thinking that, well, Christianity is just a figment of a man's imagination, I want to say to you, if that's a white man's religion that they use as colonists to come to colonize Africa, as some may put it, they may have bad intentions, but you see, Paul said, I don't care in what manner Christ is preached, whether out of rivalry. In the book of Philippians chapter 1, Paul said many preach Christ out of rivalry. You understand? He says, I don't care if Christ is preached out of rivalry. No, you know, he said, I rejoice. Why? Because still Christ is being preached. You know, you can be used as a tissue and then later, you know, you've done the business, you know, but then you're chucked away. But the work is done. So, so basically, I say this to say that if Christianity is a figment of a man's imagination, then I wonder where this power is coming from. Because when I was because I've been over there and I've seen them succumb to that power, and that power dictating and them bowing. I'm not talking about the power of God, the demonic power. Most of you don't understand. Part of my great-grandfathers, like Mtajazi and his twin sister, they're the ones among the people that built the mosque in central Kampala, the western part of Kampala city. That mosque called Chibuli Mosque was built by our people. So who was he who built that mosque? Part of the people that built the mosque. A sorcerer, a professional sorcerer, and his sister, the twin sister, Dada, we used to call her Dada, who these people would astral project. When I say astral projection, you know, English people make it look nice. Out of body experience. That astral projection. The one day in my pursuit growing up, when I did martial arts, from Jiu-Jitsu now, there's a friend of mine that now introduced me to, after Jiu-Jitsu, I wanted to do ninjutsu. Then I began to search and find a way how to make it to Japan, to go to a mountain called the Kobdera, because I wanted to go there. I wanted to be a serial killer. That was my dream, but the kind of a serial killer that does not need to come and touch you physically. As I trained and got into 7 dimensions of meditation, where I can come, leave my body, kill you, with that the traces come back to my body. And growing up, this Motajas, I'm telling you, in Uganda, most people that know Uganda, when you enter Kampala city, the central, there is a stage even for my late grandfather, because anyone who wanted demonic help, satanic help, you wanted somebody to be killed for you, you would come at ours. When I was giving this testimony, I didn't know, in London when I was running the quest, a woman comes to me and she's teary. She said, I know you, the man you're talking about. That's the man that killed my mother. Your grandfather killed my mother. I said, I wasn't born again. I wasn't part of that. And she came basically to forgive me for my grandmother killing her mother. So, well, I've seen it on the extreme. So when you make declarations, I decree, I declare. Some of you are speaking from the mouth, not actually with understanding what you're saying. Declarations are not new things that are for me. They're not a new thing for me, but I've always known it even on the other side. And they take it serious, and they believe in what they're declaring. Not like Christians that are actually making that engage in spiritual verbosity, just the verbalization of what the pastor is telling them to repeat without consciousness, without awareness of what they're doing. They're absent-minded. I declare. In the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus, fire. They're not even there. Those guys are very serious about these issues. And now let me say this to you. I saw declarations being done and I could see results. One of these my great-fathers would put, my great-grandfather, if they wanted somebody to be killed, to put 2 pigeons in a cage. And they will call, and they will actually name the pigeon. Most of you don't understand in the realm of the spirit the mystery of representation, but it is known very well in the demonic realm. You struggle with the things when we talk about representation. That's why many of you deny you and withhold your life through your tithes without even knowing. Because you don't understand the mystery of representation. And I'll say it to you in a conventional way, in a business aspect, not even moving to the spiritual for it to make sense to you. Can I tell you? In a conventional business, how many of you are employed? You lift up your hand. You're employed. You work for somebody. You work somewhere. In a conventional business, you trade your time for the money. Now, life is quantified and measured in time, isn't it? So time is quantified and also life is measured in time. So when you go to your employer, you give them your time, isn't it? Where is that life hidden? I mean, where's that time hidden? In your life. So you give your employer your life, which is your time. So therefore, the first trade is the trade of your life with time. That time represents your life. And now in response, in conventional business, we trade the time for the money. The money you call salary is a representation of your life. So now when God says, give me a tenth is a symbol of redemption. Because when you count 1 to 10, the number 10 is a number of cyclicity. When you reach 10, you go back to what? Because that's why God gave you 10 commandments. That's why you have 10 fingers, the 10-stringed lyre. The number 10 is a number of full cycle and wholeness. So you can't, when you deny your God, your tithe, you're denying him not money. In conventional business, when you went to your employer, did you go there in the spirit or in both spirit, soul, and body? Please answer. You went spirit, soul, and body to your employer. You didn't remain home and you went to work spiritually. And then they gave you money. You went spirit, soul, and body. When you went to your boss, what you don't realize is this: you gave your employer your spirit, your soul, and body in exchange for the money. So when now a tenth, when God says bring a tenth, that's a symbol of redemption. I'm trying to say this to you to show you what we mean by representation. And most people don't understand this. I've been on the extreme. I'm going to tell you some deep stuff about my family. And the reason I told you Kampala, Uganda, Tax Park, ask anybody if there is a stage called Mutajaz. Chibuli Mutajaz. Chibuli, who's Mutajaz? That's my great-great-grandfather. Why does he have a bus stop, a stage after him there, where cars park to go to that place? Because people would come there who needed spiritual help from the demonic realm to come, because only he wasn't helping people with spiritual matters in terms of voodoo, in terms of astral projection and all other things. He was the one who trained most sorcerers and witches in the country of Uganda. So he was a sorcerer of sorcerers. Growing up in our family, people coming up with the pythons, physically pythons being dragged on a banana fiber. It was a normal thing. Growing up whereby hawezi kusengenya, you cannot gossip people. You can't gossip this man. Whether you're talking on the way, he will know every conversation you've had. I remember one of our aunties who went and slept with a Christian. And in the middle of the night, he made sure she appears wherever she was. She came naked and appeared back in the living room to be a lesson to everybody else. Now, going back to what I was saying, representation in terms of your tithe. Yeah? Do you know that God, you see, most people have a problem. I know there's these people you see. Let me say this to you. I heard the prophet when I arrived was talking and said life is spiritual. Life is what? So everything that you see in the physical comes from the supernatural. That's why the average Christian the ordinary average Christian doesn't understand the mysteries of the realm of the spirit. Yet the sons of darkness who are not born again actually are very well aware of the realm of the spirit. They know that when they tell them go at the crossroads and bath at midnight hour, when the watches shift, go and bath at the midnight hour at the crossroads. As you birth, make this declaration. So as the day changes, you release yourself, whatever was, into another and cast it onto other people while you step into a new day. Now, most of you, they tell you command the day, you have no revelation, you sleep. But sons of darkness don't find that instruction as ambiguous. But you find it ambiguous because you are spirit. I don't mean you, I mean those people that are spiritually dull. But you guys are good. Now, some ignorant folk, I've had them on social media say that you're not supposed to give a tithe because a tithe is under the law. Well, let me tell you something. The tithe preceded the law. Tithe was given first. Even, are you hearing me? The tithe. Now, God himself is a tither. He said, please don't be, I'm not here to preach about money. Now, you know, there's a far thing people think maybe prophet has hired this one to come and tell us about money. Let me help you. I'm not a money preacher. Ask my children. Even what I teach, they've never had me teach at church. I don't teach these things. I teach people Jesus. When you know Jesus, you know how to give. When you love Jesus, when you love people, you give to the people you love. And the measure of your love to Jesus is when you're willing to give to him. And how little you love Jesus is by how it is reflected in how you withhold what you have from him. Okay, now let's come back here, right? Are we back? Now I was saying God is a tither. God created the entire garden, isn't it? And he told man, you're free to eat from every tree except one. So this is a year of God's glory. And God left the one tree. You know what he was saying? You are free to eat from the 90% but this 10% of the tree is mine. That is even before the law came. Are you hearing me? He said, you are free to eat from the 90. This one is mine. Don't touch that tree. Are you paying attention? Now, what happened to man? And why was that tree left? Somebody said it was preserved for God's glory. It was preserved for who? The moment man tampered with the glory of God, that was the fall of man. What did he do? Whenever a man assumes, no, eating the tithe is to assume the place of God in your life. Because let me show you. In conventional business, what have we traded? The time for the, answer me, time for the money. In conventional business. We're not talking even church, spiritual, in just conventional business. You trade your time for what? Is that money your boss gave you real?
Yes.
Is it real?
Yes.
Can he purchase things?
Yes.
Is it not a representation of your time?
It is.
Is it not your, when you do time, you don't you use your life to do time?
Yes.
So that money is not just money. That's why in the realm of the spirit, now from the other world, let me explain things. You understand?
Yes, sir.
That's why money is very serious. Money is so spiritual more than you think because of its representation.
Wow. Wow.
Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
That's why for a man to capture you in the demonic world, most of if there are any Ugandans watching me online, of any Ugandan in this congregation, you understand what we call a bigali. A chigali or a bigali, these are altars, family altars in form of baskets where our grandparents, they are passed on generationally, and you put coffee beans. When they make treaties and agreements and covenants are sealed through coffee beans and blood. So in other words, you meet together with a coffee bean, a full coffee bean, you break it apart. So you cut a little bit of your blood and mine. So I give you a part of the seed. I dip it in your blood. You dip yours in my blood. We eat. And then we make declarations. Your battles will be my battles. Your family. That's how many people in my culture, Baganda, that's how many people took on other people's names. Though they were from other tribes, they became Baganda. And they took on those names because of the covenants that are sealed with the altars. Those altars are normally put under the bed of a grandmother, grandfather, wherever the parents in that house are. Or if your mother, it's under the bed. So they know what I'm talking about. Now that altar, every time you visit to go to see your grandmother, we would be asked to put even 1 shilling, 10 shilling into the basket to honor the ancestors. Now, money is so spiritual that when you go to a shrine, have you noticed that witches, wizards, warlocks, these are druids or whatever they are, do you know the first thing they tell you? Even though you're not giving them money, you appreciate the ancestors, even like little notes. There's always a basket there where you put little notes. You understand?
Yeah.
Why? The moment you release something called money, that's when you have released your life onto an altar. So a person can only release himself onto an altar via money. That's the quickest means.
Wow. Jesus.
So some of you, what you don't release here, you release it somewhere where it will affect you.
Jesus.
Time won't permit to tell you. There's lots of things I can talk to you. But now let me go back to the issue of why I'm talking about this representation. Now, have you noticed that you can be a good prayer warrior, yet a very good prayer demonically bound good prayer warrior? There are some demons that will not leave you, not because you have not fasted and prayed, but they will not go because you have withheld your life from God. Now some people say, but how am I withholding my life from God when I'm fasting and I'm praying and I'm reading my Bible and I'm attending church? That's a good question. I'll visit it when I finish to say this. Now, Somebody say redemption.
Redemption.
What does the word redemption mean? It means to buy something back that was initially yours, isn't it? So most of us know when God talks about redeeming the firstborns, isn't it?
Yeah.
But now the firstborn, the first person to open the womb, God said the firstborns are mine. So when a person now dedicated the firstborn to God, he has redeemed that. You remember back in the days they used to, you remember Samuel? Come on, church.
Yeah.
Come on, Faf. Remember Samuel?
Yes.
When his mother made a vow and gave him to the Lord and took him literally to the house of the Lord.
Yes, sir.
So the Levitical order, most of the children in Israel were taken as the firstborns. Initially, at the first instance, they used to give these firstborns, literally, they were giving them over to God. Until now, God, made a law of redemption, whereby when a firstborn is given, all you had to do, all other children are redeemed through the firstborn. So they are so when you give the first, automatically all the rest of the other children are redeemed unto the Lord through the firstborn.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm
Come
saying?
on, sir. Yes.
So that means, now you see, when you give the 10th, you have redeemed the 90% from the altar of your boss.
My God.
Now, when you retain the 10th, which represents your life, are you hearing me? You're looking at money, you don't see life. This is the problem. If you're dozing, the demon doesn't want you to hear this. The demon of poverty. Are you listening to me? So now, when you give your tithe, I'm talking about representation here. You hear me? This what I'm teaching has got to do everything to do with the glory of God, if you don't understand.
Yes, sir.
So when you give a tithe, you know what you're doing? You are redeeming your life back from you are withdrawing your life from your boss's altar.